The brain hormones that we need for mental health and for all health are supposed to be made in the gut. This is where we produce these hormones naturally that help to feed the brain for all of our mental operations and all of our health operations. Inside the brain, these neurotransmitters, these hormones / neurotransmitters, will operate to help stabilize the brain in all of its different types of functions. This works inside through the synaptic cleft, where there are literally trillions and trillions and trillions of these little synaptic clefts, tiny little microscopic things, where the neurotransmitter is released, then reabsorbed, and this is how functions happen. An electrical stimulus causes this release of the neurotransmitter, then it's reabsorbed. Now, serotonin, our happy hormone, GABA, the stress reduction hormone, dopamine, motivation, pleasure, oxytocin, bonding, all of these very, very essential hormones are made in the gut by the bowel flora. And we need fiber for this. And here we have inside the synaptic cleft. The synaptic cleft were these tiny little neurotransmitters, these chemicals, all in the space of about an angstrom, very tiny, 10 to the -8. And we're going to find out this inside here, this is where the action happens, as an electrical stimulus will come down and cause the release of the synaptic cleft to release its neurotransmitter. Then the neurotransmitter is reabsorbed back into the original part of the synaptic cleft, the transmission end. It's called reuptake, this process of reabsorbing. All these little neurons have electrical actions of firing, but then the chemical actions, these chemicals, are made in the gut. Now we can see that there is a reabsorption of the serotonin. But chemical companies have found that certain people who have depression, see, serotonin is our happy hormone, and in order to block the reabsorption, they made a chemical. See, drug companies are always trying to block function using unnatural synthetic compounds. Rather than balance the gut flora, they seek to try to find synthetic chemical means of stabilizing. So what they did is they made formulas like Prozac, a host of other things, MAO inhibitors, which block the reabsorption. Here we see the neurotransmitter, serotonin, firing, producing the happy. Certain people don't have enough, so what they do is the chemical companies have made blockers. See these little chemicals, these little white balls, big bong balls, that's a chemical. It blocks the reuptake. So the serotonin lasts longer inside the synaptic cleft, producing a little more happiness. However, when they're blocking a natural process, does that natural process have other things that it does rather than just reabsorption? What happens? Because as we block this, we're blocking the reabsorption. This reabsorption of the serotonin has a biological function. It's called the reality check. This is how you check your reality. The reabsorption. But when we block this, we no longer can do this reality check. Serotonin is released, we have a good night, we have sex, we have alcohol, we have all these other things. And after that, in the morning, when we reabsorb the serotonin, we have our reality check. When you can't do your reality check, you see, guns don't kill people. Crazy people on doctor-prescribed drugs kill people because they can't do their reality check when they're taking these antidepressants, these serotonin reuptake blockers. They can no longer check their reality. So they start to make different crazy ideas. And the drug companies, because they're upsetting the natural process. And rather than make the hormones in the gut, they try to make the hormones in the laboratory, then sell them at profit motives. When they use these drugs, and many other types of drugs, oftentimes they use drugs that overdo. They do drugs because there's too much firing in the synaptic cleft. Or you could have street drugs that create too much firing in the synaptic cleft. Then what we have is sometimes we need to block those. There's another place where the chemical companies are trying to block function rather than balance function. They need to turn on the balancing hormones. And oftentimes use of cocaine and use of bath salts, the methcathinone, and all these other things can damage the synaptic cleft. They can actually damage receptor sites. You can see it here. They're damaging this, destroying the receptor sites, creating problems inside the brain, inside the synaptic cleft, leading to drug burnout. People will now get massive drug burnout and lose the ability to operate in the world. In order to help these people, we have to get to the gut flora, the bowel flora, and balance that. But we have to learn a lot more about our bowel flora and our needs for fiber.
Your microbiome is nourished by meals like this, rich in soluble fiber, also referred to as resistant starch. Soluble fiber can't be digested by your body, but instead becomes food for your gut bacteria. Most starch is easily digested. Starch is dissolved in the small intestine and then absorbed by your body, providing you with energy and nutrients. The remaining non-digestible portion is called resistant starch or soluble fiber. The soluble fiber continues its journey through your gut and arrives at the large intestine. We see that the soluble fiber has become exposed to the healthy bacteria of the gut microbiome. This species of bacteria specialize in breaking down soluble fiber. This breakdown process provides the bacteria with the fuel they need to survive. As they use the soluble fiber for energy, they release small carbohydrate molecules. The neighboring bacteria feed on these carbohydrates. As the bacteria feed, they excrete even smaller molecules as waste. One of the final waste products is called butyrate, an energy source for your body. As the butyrate builds up, it is absorbed by the large intestine. The presence of butyrate encourages blood to flow into the vessels of the large intestine, keeping the tissue healthy. If your diet includes enough soluble fiber, these cells will use butyrate as their main source of energy. Here, we can see the molecular surface of one of the intestinal cells. The surface is covered in special proteins that actively pump butyrate molecules into the cell. Once inside, they can be harvested for energy. In addition, butyrate has other benefits. Intestinal cells are sensitive to DNA damage caused by toxic foods and artificial ingredients. This cell's DNA has been damaged, resulting in a mutation. More damage could accumulate over time as the cell divides, which could lead to colon cancer. But a steady supply of butyrate allows the damage to be more easily detected, and the cell can activate a suicide program in response. Because the damaged cell destroys itself, it can't progress to form a cancer. A starved microbiome is unable to protect you from cancer. By eating foods rich in soluble fiber-resistant starch, you can nourish your microbiome and improve your health.
When bacteria digest fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids that nourish the gut barrier, improve immune function, and can help prevent inflammation, which reduces the risk of cancer.
The fiber that we're talking about comes from the cell walls of the plant cells. Animal cells have a soft membrane. When you eat meat, it's more easy to digest. You don't get that fiber. The fiber comes in from the cell walls of plants. And we need to have the whole cell, the whole plant. We have to get the whole plant foods. But our society has decided to remove many of the cell walls. Like in the juice, apple juice, orange juice, they remove the cell walls. You see, they remove that. Now with smoothies, we can get back the cell walls. And we get that fiber that comes from the cell walls. With flour, they remove the cell wall from the flour. They remove the cell wall from the sugar. So all of these processed foods have now become low fiber and thereby problems. We need to get good whole plant foods so we can understand more about all of the benefits that happen from whole plant foods. When you don't get enough fiber and you take in sugar, you can get bad bacteria that will take over your brain.
Signals from stimuli are converted into tiny electrical pulses. These pulses propagate via synapses onto the afferent neuron of the vagus nerve. Vagal neurons carry the sensory information to the brainstem, linking the signals generated inside the small intestine to the brain. The neuropod cell connection with the vagus nerve serves as a conduit for food in the gut to influence brain function within seconds. This connection is also a potential portal for gut pathogens to access the brain.
Now we can see and one can understand the mechanism of how this bacteria through the vagus nerve can take over the brain. And the sugar-fed bacteria will make you crave the sugar, crave antibiotics, but antibiotics also feed it. And this will create a problem that lowers your IQ, lowers your memory, makes it unable to deal with stress. You cannot make the different hormones. And the bad bacteria take over your brain, make you crave the food that feeds them, not the food that feeds you. And whole foods with fiber, whole plant foods, are the answer.